Okay, so today we're going to talk about market research, right? And how to go about doing market research. Because we've talked a little bit about the importance of market research already in past classes, and some aspects of market research like consumer profiles, what is the meaning of some demographics and segmentation and stuff like that. And what the purpose of all of that is, but we never really talked about how to do that practically. How do we research demographics? How do we research certain markets, right? So let's dive right in. So what's the purpose of market research? So the definition that Investopedia gives for market research is the process of determining the viability, of a new service or product through research conducted directly with potential customers. All right, so what does that mean necessarily? Well, it means it's talking about discovering target markets, right? And learning about those target markets. So market research allows companies to define and understand their customers to a greater extent, right? So if I don't do market research, if I don't look into the markets that I'm going for, if I don't understand those target markets that I'm looking at, then I'm not going to be able to understand how I best reach out to my customers, right? How do I best see the viability of a new product or service? Viability meaning like, is it capable of surviving? Like, is it going to thrive in this market? If I start selling it, do people want it? Am I going to be able to sell long-term in this market, or am I not going to be able to make enough profit and it's going to fail? Like, viability is the ability for it to be productive in a market, to sell in a market, and to survive in a market. And so what does this need? Discovering our target markets. What do we need when we look into our target markets and understand our customers? How do we get to that? Well, we have to collect data, like we've talked about a lot before. Data, super important in marketing. There's a couple aspects of data over here. So I made 4 main ones. The first one being other similar products. So one aspect of market research is looking into your competition, right? You want to be able to see what other similar products there are out there, because if you're the mirror image of another product, well, that other product is already in the market, right? So you coming into the market, the only way that you're going to steal what we call market share, which is if there is, actually, if we have a pie chart right here, and we're talking about the market for buying shoes, right? Well, we could say it's broken up like that. And this is Nike. This is Adidas. This is Reebok. This is a new Chicago brand, which is becoming really popular, Allbirds. And then this is all that, I don't know, another, let's say we can call this Yeezys. So that is all the shoes that are being bought in a certain area of Chicago, right? Well, if we're selling shoes that look exactly like and are exactly like Nike in all other ways, well, if this is 100% of the customers in our region, hold on a second. Sorry, my dog gets a little frustrated and lonely if he's not in the room with me. So he was scratching at my door. Anyway, so if this is 100% of our customers, right, and our product is exactly like Nike, well, Nike already has a certain percentage of the market, right? So all their customers are already going to them. And so they're pretty set in the market. They're established, like people know who they are, people like them. And unless we change our product, we're not going to be able to steal much, if any, market share from Nike, because they already have a huge part of the market share for their quality, for their price, and for their style. So we can't be a mirror image. We have to change up our marketing. Otherwise, we'll never get market share. We'll never get a percentage of the customers who are buying shoes. So other similar products. We need to find other products or other like products to see if the market is ripe or fully saturated with choice. So fully saturated meaning this market right here that we talked about would be considered pretty saturated, right? Like there are a lot of companies selling shoes in Chicago. So what a saturated market is with choice is that there are a ton of different choices out there. Like the market or people's choice, the amount of people's choice is pretty huge, right? When you go downtown Chicago or when you go to a shoe store, it's not like you're struggling to find different choices for your shoes. Like there are plenty of shoes out there. There are plenty of companies out there. And so it's pretty saturated. So if a new company tried to jump in, unless they had something radically different, then the market's pretty saturated already. So it'd be hard for them to steal market share. So a saturated market, a market that's already pretty full and can't take many more companies or many more brands in a certain area, like, for example, shoes, like we were talking about. So then another aspect would be you would want to see what other companies are using as their competitive pricing. Is that viable for you? So each company is going to price their shoes at a certain price, right? And there are multiple reasons why a company would price something at the given price that they have. So when we think about prices are not pure profit, right? So when a company says they're going to sell a pair of shoes for $79 or $79.99, are they gaining $79.99? No, they're not. Because when they price that, they're pricing in the cost of how much it took them with the raw materials, how much the raw materials cost them, then how much the labor cost them, right? Because they have to pay their employees to turn the raw materials into shoes. Then they add on however much it costs them to keep their shoes stocked in certain stores, because some stores you have a stocking fee. Then they add a small bit of advertising cost in every shoe they sell. Because when you're selling shoes, right, the advertising budget has to come from somewhere. So yeah, you sell a lot of shoes, but your advertising budget is spread throughout each shoe that you buy, right? Or each shoe that you sell. So if you spend $1 million in advertising and you sell 1 million shoes, then what you're going to do is you're going to spread out that 1 million in advertising to each one of those shoes that you sell to cover the advertising cost. So each one of those shoes, you're going to say, okay, we are going to price it $1 more so that we can cover our advertising costs. And so there are plenty of other prices, right, that go into what makes the final product. And yeah, in the end, you do have profit, but that profit is not nearly as much as the price that you're going to see on the price tag. It could be a lot. You could have a fair bit of profit, but that price tag right there, that is not what the company makes, because they have all of these other considerations to pay for in the end, right? So when we think about what is competitive pricing and is that viable for you, that means this is what other companies are selling in the market right now. That is where the supply and the demand curves meet. Is that possible for you, given the raw materials that you're buying, given the labor that you are paying for, given the advertising that you're doing, given the stocking price, and all of the other considerations? Is that possible for you to price your shoes at that price and still make a profit, or a profit that is enough to keep your company growing or at least keep it afloat? So for example, if you were sourcing your raw materials from a particularly fancy place, like if it was all natural, right? If every part of your shoe was all natural, like real, not synthetic rubber and all of that, and very high quality cured fabric and everything, then it would probably be a lot more expensive than the synthetic shoes that Nike is making, right? Which I don't know what they do with their product. I'm just using this as an example. But and if, let's say, you're in a poorer region of the US or a more rural region, like let's say Wyoming, where the cost of living is very low, right? So if the cost of living is very low, then wages are going to be a lot lower. If you try selling the product that you have, which has a high raw material expense, well, then it's going to be harder for you to fit in that cost right there when everybody's wages are low and they're willing to pay, or there's a lot less that they're willing to pay for the shoes. So if you're selling in Chicago versus if you're selling in Wyoming, there's probably going to be a lot of a difference there between how many shoes you can sell because of the price. And the same goes with labor, right? If you're in an area that has a high minimum wage, then you have to factor that into the price of your shoe. So not only is, kind of going back to minimum wage, not only is it problematic because, people are less employed, right? But on top of that, prices for everything else go up because they have to factor in the cost of paying their employees more. And then, so back to the shoes anyway. So the amount of labor will factor into your cost, the amount of advertising into your cost, all of that. So is that possible for you, given what you're paying your employees, given what you're paying for your raw materials? Can you compete with that price? If you have the same, if you're doing the same pitch as Nike, can you compete with Nike's price? And there's a lot of strategy in price. Like, for example, this is kind of an older example, but back in the day, in the times before the USA was the USA, when we were just the colonies, or one of the problems that we had was England was coming into the American markets and doing what was called dumping, which is where they would bring in a bunch of products and sell it at a very, very low cost, right? So they'd pretty much take a loss on their price. They would lose money on what they were selling their products for, because they could not sell it viably with their raw materials, their labor, and their advertising and all that. They would sell it at a loss so that American companies or colonial companies couldn't compete. And then once all the colonial companies couldn't compete, then they would jack up the pricing super high because there's no competition, right? So you would be forced. So let's say with tea, if there are American companies trying to sell tea, or sorry, colonist companies trying to sell tea, and then the British companies came in and sold it at a super low cost that the colonist companies couldn't compete with, then the colonist companies would go out of business, and then the British companies could shoot up the prices because there's no competition. That's dumping right there. So there's a lot of strategies that you can use in your pricing. And so the viability of your pricing and the competition pricing, just researching that and researching their strategies is very important to understand. All right, am I going to be able to work in this market? Am I going to be able to survive, gain market share, and distinguish myself from all the other products out there? Am I going to be able to make myself unique in a way that people will want to buy my product, even if it's more expensive or less expensive, because it's something different, right? I'm not the same exact thing as Nike, so maybe I can market myself in a different way. But I need to be able to understand how to gain that market share and how to price myself in that market. All right, then the last thing I've written down for here is, do you add anything different of value to the market that will help you grow and differentiate yourself? So I just talked about that a little bit, but to expand on that a little more, you don't want to be a mirror image, right? So in some way or other, you will be different as a company, whether that's your pricing, whether that's quality of your product, whether that's your company image, whether that's your company values, right? One thing or another, you want to be different, and you will be different from other companies. It's just how much are you going to be able to display that? Like, not obviously, pretty much no company is the exact same. So, and the problem here with differentiating yourself, finding where you are different from other companies, is you want to be able to understand what that differentiation is, where you differ from other companies, and how do we market that so people would want to buy from us. Because maybe there are some small ways where you differentiate from other companies that people don't care about, but we want to find the important ways that will drive people to buy from you so that you can gain market share. And it's important to understand the differentiation, because that's pretty much the core of your marketing. I pulled up on here a little example that we can look at. Something interesting to note is if you go onto pretty much any company website, then you will find how the company is trying to differentiate themselves. It's pretty clear. And let me flip this really quick. It's kind of funny too, because I didn't realize this until I talked about it in a marketing class, but when we do marketing, right, we want to have a unified image. We want to have something that we push more than anything else, right? We talked about this a little bit with past marketing classes that we've had. I think we talked about it when we were talking about the experience economy, if you want to go back and look at that video. But we want to have a concerted push towards one direction. We want to be able to focus on one aspect of our company that differentiates us, right? So if you look at a company's page, the front page on any business, you'll see what they're focusing on, what's the most important part of their business that they think differentiates them from other businesses. With Adidas, they seem to be very focused on fresh and trendy, right? What is the latest trend? What is like the style, right? They're focused more on style and what's trendy, stay in the know. All this is geared towards what's fashionable, what's trendy, while still being a little bit sporty. But like, it's very much about the look of it. Whereas if we go over to Nike, Nike's all about athletic, right? Athletic wear. So next season, they have people running, running essentials, and then just everything, every photo they have. Whereas if we go back to Adidas, every photo they have is more style, right? Nike, when we go over to Nike, it's all about the athletics, right? Yoga, we have yoga over there. Running shoes again. Nike Sports, right? Where all athletes belong. All that Nike is trying to do with their marketing is they're trying to push that they are the athletic clothing and shoe brand, right? Adidas is trying to say, yeah, we're a little bit sporty, but we're the trendy clothing and shoes brand. Nike, the sporty clothing and shoes brand. And this is the example that I was given in my marketing class the next one that we're going to use just so we can see it. I think it's easier to see. It's not that exciting, you know, or relatable, but it's laundry detergent. It makes it pretty clear. Like I said, not all that exciting. Oh, shoot. But we can pull it up. So Gain, right? Gain is a laundry detergent. The interesting thing about Gain versus, I just deleted it here, Tide, is if you go on to the two websites, Tide is very, very clear that they are like, you put your clothes in, you use Tide, and the next thing that happens is spray goodbye to germs, ultimate clean. Like it is, you're going to get the best deep cleaning that you can get out of any detergent. No thanks. You're going to get the best cleaning that you can get out of any detergent if you use Tide. Number one trusted laundry detergent. You know, everything's about it being clean. We go back to Gain and everything over here because Tide is already pushing for being clean. So Gain has to push somewhere else because when people think clean, it's going to be harder for Gain to sell their product if people are already thinking Tide when they think clean. So that's what we would say is them trying to find their niche in the market, them trying to find a spot that they can really push for their marketing. So I think it's pretty clear for everybody to see. Gain is focusing on scent, right? They focus on scent, like they have all the different scents, the styles, warm, soften, everything's about fabric softener and like scent boost. So it's a lot more focused on the scent side of your products, right? Even in their trash bags, it's Febreze, right? You've got Febreze in your trash bag so your trash doesn't smell bad. So Gain's whole public image is, hey, we are the ones that produce good scents. So you're going to have good smelling laundry. You're going to have like all bad smells go away if you use Gain. And so they're trying to push for a different market, whereas Tide is trying to push for cleanliness. They're pushing for scent. And that's how they're differentiating themselves from each other because they're using different market demands and pushing into those different market areas. All right. The next topic, regional demand. All this, again, is under data that we can collect on our customers. So the first point, do people need or want your product? So right over here, you're not going to be selling corn to people in Illinois because if you guys have ever traveled anywhere in Illinois, you know, outside of Chicago, it's pretty much nothing but cornfields. Like anywhere beneath that line in Illinois to like here, everywhere you look is just straight cornfields and there's nothing outside of that. So you're probably not going to have a huge corn market in the middle of Illinois. So you have to understand what the needs are of your customers, right? Because if a huge part of Illinois is already selling or making and selling corn in corn towns, you know, like Peoria or something like that, you're not really going to find anybody who wants to buy corn because it's already fully saturated, like we talked about before. It's all the supply is there and there's very little demand. So you want to understand if the people in that region need your product, if they don't already have that, right? So you want to understand what more or less goes on where you are looking to sell. Because if you're looking to sell in a certain area and it's already fully saturated, then you're not going to do well. So you want to understand your region, right? Next, how much is already being produced to fill that need? We talked about that again right here with the corn. If you already have a huge supply, then the demand is not really going to cover that supply because already everybody has what they need. So when you talk about how much is already being produced, you want to understand in your market as well, like in the same example with the shoes, if there is a huge supply already for shoes, then it's going to be very hard for you to steal market share. So how much is being produced in that region when you do your research? How much is being produced in that region already? And is it possible for us to sneak into that region, right? Is it possible that this area is going to be a high demand, low supply area, or is it not? You know, we want to be able to understand that. So we need to collect data on the region to understand that supply and demand necessity. All right. Is your market a niche or non-existent? So the idea of a niche market, I alluded to it when we were talking about the differentiation. But so in a niche market, what a niche market is a market that nobody's really going for because of its specificity. So because it's so specific. So a niche market would be, well, a market would be selling shoes, right? A niche market would be selling shoes sourced from India, right? Because it's much more specific than just selling shoes. You know, it can be in another market, but it's something very, very specific. So is your market a niche or non-existent? So in that example that I gave, maybe there is a demand for a leather shoe that's sourced from India and people just haven't realized that yet, but most likely it's a non-existent market. People don't care enough about the leather shoe coming from a certain region. They just want a shoe, right? People don't care enough about that they're going to go directly to your niche, right? Your niche needs to be something that people demand that there is little supply for, right? So when we're talking about niche markets, we need them to be unique markets, specific markets that people have demand for, and that demand has not been realized yet or fulfilled. All right. Next up, consumer preference and behavior. All right. Are you filling a gap in the current market that has gone unfulfilled? So this is kind of the idea of a niche market right there, but it's more specific. So we need to talk about, when we're talking about markets, or sorry, this isn't the niche market. This is like the example we're giving in the first one over here on how do you differentiate yourself, because inevitably you will be differentiated, right, by something, because unless you have the same exact shoe as Nike for the same exact price, using the same exact marketing and selling to the same exact people, there will be differences between you. It's just, how do we talk about those differences? How do we display those differences to our consumers, right? Because consumers in certain regions will prefer one thing or another. So maybe in Chicago, something that you find in your research is that Chicago customers tend to be very price sensitive, meaning they don't like having too high of prices, right? They are very sensitive to like changes of prices. So you want to be more cautious about your prices, but Chicago customers don't care about the quality as much. It can be a lower quality, but if it's a good bargain, then they'll go for it. Whereas maybe in New York, they're less price sensitive, but they're very focused on quality, right? Like if it's bad quality, then there's no chance that you're going to sell in New York. Some other factors are ease of use. So a lot of the reason why people buy Apple products and buy iPhones, for example, is because what they call the graphical user interface, or GUI in the engineering and computer programming world, is the GUI, graphical user interface, how you interact with the phone, like the screen and like how easy it is to use apps. It's very easy to use with Apple's compared to other brands, right? So Apple's GUI is really easy versus Samsung, which is like harder. You need to spend a little more time understanding the phone before you really get used to it, right? So your ease of use is super important as well. And then another one is the aesthetics of it, right? How does it look? Maybe to some people, the look of a product is a lot more important than its actual practicality, right? So, you know, there's a lot of things out there that I don't think are necessarily practical, right? But some people like because of the looks of them. So, for example, some modern art, you know, it might be very interesting to look at, but maybe some people are more appreciative of modern art than others because, you know, it may look nice, you know, it may have nice aesthetics, but what does it do for you, right? So, and maybe somebody in Chicago is very focused on like, yes, I want the aesthetics to be right, but you need to understand where your consumers lie, right? What do they like? And the list goes on. There's like practicality of the product and all of that. And it goes on with the different ways that you can understand your customer's preference, right? What they're going to like. But you need to understand at a base level, what is your customer most focused on? What do they value most in a product? What are they looking for out of the aspects of a product, right? What do they want? And how do we fulfill that? Is our product going to fulfill that? Or do we need to look other places? And then are there cultural or geographic consequences that need to be considered, right? So similar to the example over here with selling corn in Illinois, because that market is already saturated, well, there's also geographic or cultural consequences. Like, are you going to sell like air conditioner to, you know, to cool down the house of somebody in Alaska? No, I mean, because of their geography, they just don't need that. So there's no market for that. There's going to be no consumer who looks for that. There's going to be no consumer who wants that because they have no need for it. So, and you need to understand as well the cultural consequences. So, like we talked about with corporate social responsibility, in some regions, consumers prefer to have products that have certain values, right? So you need to understand where your consumer base lies culturally so that you can tailor your values, your corporate social responsibility to their preferences. All right, and lastly in data is the demographic makeup of your market that you're looking into. All right. How will the median and the average income, employment, regional growth, etc., affect the success of your product or service, right? So those aspects of a demographic region are super important. So like we were talking about with maybe Chicago is more price sensitive or maybe New York is less price sensitive, a lot of that comes down to people's income, right? People's income versus what we say is the standard of living, right? Or the cost of living. So things are a lot more expensive in Chicago than in Wyoming because Wyoming, the wages are lower and there are less, there's less demand for certain products, and you can get cheaper labor to produce. So a lot of the costs are lower than Chicago because Chicago is a place that a lot of people live, a lot of skilled people live. It's high activity, so there's a high demand for housing there to be in a big city, So everything is the prices are all higher because you need more money to pay for the more expensive house that you have or the more expensive apartment that you have because a lot of people live in Chicago, and so you need more money for it, which means that you're paid more money so you can, use the money that you have to pay for the food that you have, but the food that you have is stocked by the people in the store who live near Chicago who have a higher wage, and all of it builds on each other. So the median income and the standard of living, the unemployment in a region, and regional growth affected because median income, how much can people afford, right? Unemployment, is the region that you're in a place that is doing very well economically? So can they afford to buy your product? And regional growth. If the regional growth in an area is going down, if less and less people are living in that area, is it a good idea for you to start selling there, right? Because if it's going down, then that means the amount of people who will potentially buy your product is disappearing. Then you don't want to be in a place like that. You want to be in a place that you can spread and continue and grow along with, getting more customers, right? And the only way you get more customers if there's people there. All right. And then what types of individuals are going to buy your product? So this is more in the psychographic part of marketing, right? So this is understanding your consumer profile. What types of individuals are going to buy your product? And are they there in your region? So let's say you are selling, for example, high heels, right? And the city that you're selling in is 80% male, right? Are you going to sell a lot of high heels in a city that's 80% male? Probably not. So best to look for a place that has more women who are going to buy the high heels, right? So you want to understand your consumer profile, and you want to look for a place that will fulfill that, right? That you have a big customer base or a big demand, right? All right. And then lastly over here, is the product suited or marketable in the predominant groups? So that's kind of similar to the last thing that I just talked about with high heels, but on top of that, it goes into a little bit of what do your customers want as you understand your consumer profile, right? So your predominant groups in a region. So maybe the predominant groups are they're male, they're under 30 years old, and they're working as businessmen, and they live in a house that costs $200K, right? So you want to understand what a man who's under 30, who works as a businessman living in a $200K house wants, right? You want to understand what they want and how to market to them. Because as we've talked about before, different market demographics are not going to react the same way to marketing. So that demographic right there, if that is the predominant demographic, meaning the majority of people fit this group right here, if that's the main group in a region, then it's not going to be the same marketing that you would do for maybe a male who is, say, or sorry, that's under 30. There we go. Over 80, who works as a dentist and lives in a $600K house. Like you're not going to market the same way to these two groups, right? One of them's a lot younger, the other one's a lot older. They have different professional interests. They are of different incomes and housing values, so they have different amounts of what we call disposable income, meaning income that you can use for things that are not necessities. So things that you don't really need, that you just buy, like that extra piece of clothing or buying another iPhone or something like that. So disposable income that you can use, that you don't need to like pay your taxes with or pay for your housing, anything like that, any necessities. This guy's going to have a lot more disposable income than this guy. So you're going to market it in a different way. All right. Whew. So now I'm going to take the last portion of class to talk about your final project. All right. So as we're coming to the last week of classes, we want to work on our final project to really finish off the year well. So I've had you kind of working on this part already, but we're going to move into this part. So for the website, the final project is I want you to take the website that you've made already, right? You have an idea of what you want your product to be. You want to produce something, and I want you to give it more description. Find a differentiation that your product can have and go for it. Like if you're looking at shoes in Chicago and you're seeing that maybe there aren't a lot of brands out there in Chicago that focus on comfort, then go for it. I want you to focus on whatever you think will work best and find that niche in whatever market you're looking for. It doesn't have to be Chicago, could be anywhere, could be any product. Find that niche and make your product differentiated, different from all the other products out there, and describe why it's different and market why it's different, right? And then I want you to go into a little bit of about us, right? A little bit about a little bit of storytelling. It doesn't have to be something too long, but a little bit of storytelling about your company, right? Or how you came up with the idea of making a shoe that is comfortable, right? Because you saw that no one else was doing it, and like how did you get to your product? And this can be the creative side, making that on your website. And so since marketing is more than just creativity, marketing is data, right? I want you guys to also do a little bit of market research. So most of this, you're already halfway done with this. You've made your website. You've talked a little bit about your product. So this part, we've already worked on a fair bit. The market research, this is pretty new. So what I want you guys to do is decide where you're going to sell it, right? I want you to decide where you're going to sell your product. And then after you figure that out, create a customer profile, which, as we talked about before, I brought it back over here, has the location, the age, the gender, the employment, and the income of a fictional person that you make up for the purpose of understanding your customers. I want you to create a customer profile that has all those, and I'll put up these notes, just a reminder. I'll put up these notes for you guys to see on the shared folder. Haven't done it yet, but I will get to it today. So create a customer profile, decide where you're going to sell, and your consumer demographics in that location, right? So going back to this, the average or median income, the unemployment rates, the regional growth, the housing costs, things like that. The age makeup, the dominant job function of that region, right? Facts like that. I want you to understand the region that you're selling in, and I want you to understand that, and then we'll do a little bit of market research together on it, and then you guys can make a report for me, just a short 1-page or 2-page report on Google Docs or Microsoft Word with the customer profile and the consumer demographics. I also want you to understand what similar products are already being sold in the region that you're in, right? So if you're selling shoes in Chicago for comfort, I want you to understand what other products are there out there in Chicago being sold right now and what gaps you can fill in. So the gap in this example would be the comfort, right? Comfort as opposed to the sportiness or the trendiness that's already out there? What gaps can you fill in that these companies, these similar products, haven't already filled in? And then lastly, I want you to give a general idea of what you would sell your product for. So all of this research can be on like a 2-page document on Google Drive or Microsoft Word, and this is your final project. So this isn't due until the end of the program, but I'm telling you guys this now because this is probably going to be a little bit more work for you. Actually, it's definitely going to be a little bit more work for you, and I want you to be able to start working on it ahead of time. This week, we're still going to be working on, and in office hours, still working on describing how our websites can be better. But I want you guys to start thinking about in what ways can I understand my market and start to make a market research report. All right. Well, that's really hard, and I don't know where to start. Boom. Got this already set up for you. So some good places on where to go, right? Because I know when I first started thinking of market research, because this is something that I was telling Avio this a little bit, I think last office hours, I worked in Mexico for a couple companies this past spring break before everything happened with COVID. I worked in Mexico with some small businesses, and one of the things that I had to do for them is I had to do market research to understand Chicago and Milwaukee markets so that they could see if it was a good thing for them to export to and what people thought about their product, right? So I had to do a lot of research like that, and these are some places that I saw were really good for research. And I know it seemed like a really tough process before I understood where to look, and it was kind of difficult to think of market research, like how do I even begin with market research, because there's so much data out there, but like I don't even know where to look for the data. I know that's what was going through my mind. So if you guys need any help with your market research, you can ask me, and here are some sites that I would recommend for you. So the US Census Bureau, they have a lot of good stuff. Like it is mandatory for everybody to take part in the census, as you guys have probably seen, because there's a lot of advertising out there about it. So they have a ton of data on different regions in the US. So if you're looking to sell in the US, your product, then you can look at the Census Bureau. They'll have a lot of demographic research. Statistica and Pew Research Center are also great places just to find the general demographic research. Statistica and Pew Research also go a little bit into psychographic research. They do like polls, or they do surveys and stuff like that. So they'll get some of the getting into the mind of the customer and seeing like what they want. So you can look there for some psychographic research. Google Trends and surveys, you can use that. Mainly Google Trends is for SEO, search engine optimization, but it can also show interest level by region, country, state, and city, which is super, super helpful. So if you go on to Google Trends and you type in a word that's related to what you want to sell, so if you typed in comfortable shoes or something like that, it'll tell how many times people search that and how interested people are by region, country, state, and city. So so you can see like, oh, maybe people are more interested in comfortable shoes in the Rocky Mountains than they are in the middle of Kansas, right? And it'll like show on a heat map where people are more interested. And you can see by state, like I said, all these different aspects. These two are probably going to be the most interesting for you to see. But it can be very helpful if you use it in the right way. If you look up topics related to your product. All right, and then the last one is Claritas. And this looks at psychographic research and demographic research by zip code. So if you type in a certain zip code of a certain region, then it tells you a crazy amount of information. Like It'll tell you what the average car for the average person there, like in that zip code, what the average family size is, where the family goes on average for like lunch, where like just random but like very intense facts about like the average consumer there. So if you want to work on your consumer profile, Claritas is extremely helpful. Like it'll tell you their average hobbies, like their, anything you need to know about the psychographics. Claritas is super, super helpful. All right. So in the end, what do I want you to learn? What I want you to learn is, who are you selling to? What are you selling to them? And why are they going to buy your product? So the purpose of this program, the business apprenticeship, was to give you guys an idea of how businesses are run and what goes through the mind of businessmen when they're trying to sell products, and how do they become successful. And Gabby wanted me to have you guys create a product at the end of this, to create an idea of what you want to make, so that you had an idea of how businesses are started and what steps you need to take, right? And I think personally, I think these are the most important considerations that you need to understand when you want to start a business. These are like the basics, right? You can have all like the economic understanding in the world. You can have all of like the best accountants in the world. You can have all the best financial managers in the world. But if you don't understand who you're selling to, what you're selling them, and why they would want to buy your product, then your product's not going to sell, and you're not going to have a functioning business. So if you guys can get this, then I think that it would be a successful year for the business apprenticeship. So just remember, market research, really important. And I want you guys to start thinking about that for your final project due at the end of program. And try not to push it off, because it's easy to say that you can do it later, but this is going to be a little bit more work than your average project that we've done in this class. And I'll send out an email with links to all of these websites. But yeah, and if you need any help, I'd be happy to help you out with directing you to where you should go for your project or for your research. So yeah, you can just reach out to me. All right. That's all I got for you today. We're already at time. If anybody has any questions, remember you can stay behind, or you can comment on the video, or you can email me, whatever works best for you. But if not, then have a great day and you are free to go. I'll see you in office hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.